And we're back, Jonathan.
Yes, another episode of the Road to Code.
That's right. So why don't we jump into the R2C merch or Road to Code merch, Jonathan?
All right. We have our merch on our Road to Code website. And on the homepage, we have this little menu that has official merch.
And that takes you to the place where people can go and buy some official R2C merch.
Yes, we have women's t-shirts, regular t-shirts, and coffee mugs.
Those are pretty cool. I like the coffee mug. But, not every up-and-coming developer, Jonathan, has the money to pay big bucks for this. Is there any way to get it for free?
All you have to do is go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/growingupjohn, all one word, and John is Jon, and subscribe to our Road to Code podcast channel. And we have a monthly raffle that you could enter to win. And all you have to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Wait a second. But you just said you have a monthly raffle. What if I want to win every month? If I could only subscribe once, how do I enter every month?
If you're already subscribed, all you have to do is comment, "Show me the merch."
Oh, so let me get this straight. If you have the big bucks, you go to theroadtocode.net and you click on the merch menu navigation, which will take you to our store to purchase. But if you're broke just like us, then you go over to youtube.com/growingupjohn and you subscribe. If you're already subscribed, you comment on any one of our videos. If you have nothing to say, you just say, "Show me the merch." And that'll just enter you into that monthly raffle to get free merch.
Yeah, all you have to do is that. And we're only shipping out to US residents.
For now.
We'll
expand. Once we become world famous developers, we'll expand worldwide shipping, right?
Yeah.
So just like that, huh? Whoa, what just happened?
We just got free merch.
We just got free merch? Oh my goodness. That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast.
Let's do it. All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, let's get started.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast here. And so in the last episode, we made some groundbreaking progress in our application called Goontacts, which is a clone to Google Contacts, right?
Yeah.
So Google Contacts is a little bit of a challenging application. I'm not gonna try to play it down much because there is quite a few things that need to go through, but we're gonna try on the simple scale to try to get some data into the database itself. And then as we become successful on that, we're gonna continue to add complexity to it. I don't know that we'll ever get to the level of what Google Contacts can do, because they do use a completely different database platform than what we're using. We're obviously using SQL Server. We're trying to take advantage of the technologies that would be used on a larger scale. But it is going to be interesting to see it go through its full life cycle. And so we are pushing the code up to GitHub. So the code is available on your repo, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Why don't we start by sharing your screen, and let's fire up Chrome first, and let's go to GitHub, and so that people can see where the repo is located. So what is your profile?
My profile is IJAC213. And the
All right.
It's called Goontacts.
Cool. And everything's there so people can grab the code. We do eventually need to include the database scripts, which we'll get into a little later. But for now, we do have that application up there, and we're just going to have to add those scripts, and we can do that on the side. It doesn't necessarily. Maybe we'll do it as a little short skit database creation, so we can show the kids how to script out a database, and so it would be interesting. Very cool. All right, let's open up Visual Studio and let's take a quick gander at what we have. We have if we start from the top, obviously we have the solution of Goontacts, right? Over on the Solution Explorer on your right-hand side.
Yeah.
That's the solution itself, which is basically a file that contains references to projects. In this case, we have one project, which is the Goontacts.web app. And within here, we have several folders. One of the most important folders is the client app folder, which contains the React app. So in here is where our code for the React application is located. The next folder would be the controllers, which is where our contacts controller is located. This has the one method in here. Go ahead and expand contacts controller. We have go ahead and expand that, where we have the get contact list. And this gives us the list of contacts for our homepage, or the list of contacts. And then we have data, which are just data models, or actually the data access, I should say. So this is the way that we grab information from the database. And then we have models, which is a contact item, right? And this represents the structure that we need in order to go and display the data. And so that would be what the models represent. And then we have a repository, which is basically the glue between the controller and the data access components, or the data itself, right? And so in the data is what accesses the database. The repositories is the glue between the controllers and the data classes. And so, yeah, so that's where we're at. Everything is kind of auxiliary, right? Everything else is just needed in order to launch the application. We have app settings, we have program files, we have startup files, and then weather forecast just happens to be there because that's what comes as part of the application template. And so that's kind of where it's at. What we're looking to do is, in this next step, is we're probably gonna have to break this up into several smaller steps because it's gonna take a little bit to get it going. Can you open up SQL Server? So if we open up, yep, this diagram is exactly what I wanted to see. So we have three tables. We have the person table that basically contains first name and last name. We have on the left, we have phone, which is a relationship between person and phone, which allows one person to have multiple phones. And then we also have email, which allows one person to have multiple emails. And so in this particular case, this is all we have right now because we want to keep it simple as we're creating the pages. And as we successfully expand on this, we want to be able to make it more complicated and make it more like Google Contacts. And we're going to try to get as close as possible to it. But just due to the different technologies that are being used, it may not be completely identical, but the functionality should be there. So the question is, where do we start from, Jonathan? We have the user interface. Mm-hmm. We have the server, which is in the middle, right? Which has a controller, the data access, all that good stuff. And then we have the database where we send the information to, and we have to store that information. The question is, do we start at the front or do we start at the back and move our way from one to the back?
I think since we've been starting from the front, this whole project, we should start from the front for this too.
Okay, we definitely could. We can definitely start from the front, but we always have to keep in mind what we're going to need for the back. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to need from the back is the first name, the last name, the phone number, including the area code, the country code, the area code, the subscriber code, the extension. And then we're also going to need the email address. Now, we could just simply put a default label of home for these entries. Or we can actually provide part of it as label. So the way I'm looking at it, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to need an object with 10 fields.
Okay.
So if we go back to Visual Studio and we go into the client app and into source, okay, it's going to be under the create, and go ahead and open up that create file. In here is where we're going to need to have our entry into. Basically, we need to create a form that will accept all this information. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So what project do we have where we've created a data entry form already?
We did it for the significant
Birthdays, right?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and open up significant birthdays. I think you're going to need to open that with Visual Studio Code. So I think it's called Edit Birthday or Edit Birthday 2. Which one is it? Let's go to Edit Birthday 2. Yeah, this is the one that we're going to be using. So because React, the latest version of React, what version are we on? Let's see, React versions. The latest version of React is currently version 17. And version 17 highly encourages function components, okay, which means that we're not going to be inheriting from the React component. There's basically going to be the fat arrow function. And it's highly encouraged to use this. So this is probably the route that we want to take, because it enables a lot of their functionality that simplifies the coding a little bit more, if it makes sense. So let's go ahead and let's go over to Visual Studio. Let's call it, we actually want to call it Edit Contacts. So go ahead and hit yes and call it Edit Contacts. Edit Contact. And then, go ahead and rename that. And then let's rename that folder to Edit Contact, all lowercase. And so on line 3, let's rename that create to Edit Contact. And then on line 13, let's go ahead and export Edit Contact. And let's go ahead and save that in. And let's make sure that our application is still running. So let's go ahead and run this.
All right.
And let's go click on the create. Okay, cool. So that's working. That's the renaming. It renamed the references for us. So that helps us out really good. Let's go ahead and close this down. Let's look at the significant birthday form. And we're going to want to we will start with line 9. You see how it's going to use state. And essentially what we want to do is we want to set up our initial state of the information that we want to gather in this form. So I would say let's go copy 9 through 15. Before we do that, Jonathan, go back to Visual Studio Code. Can you scroll down to the render return right there, return. So in here, we should create our form before we actually start with the state. This way we kind of see what this is going to drive our state, as like what information we're going to gather. So let's go ahead and do something similar to this. For this one, unfortunately, you're probably going to have to type it out. So my suggestion would be to go ahead and put Visual Studio Code on a different window. You can go ahead and start with that return as to how, so you can get rid of 5 through 9, and then go ahead and start with the container and the row and the column. So you're going to need a / to close. So whenever you create, I know Visual Studio doesn't, Visual Studio is not as good as Visual Studio Code when it comes to creating React code. But out of habit, you should always close your tags.
All right.
So that's pretty much what you need, right? For the label.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go ahead and put your first name input. For now, you can leave the value. You can leave the value out for now.
Okay.
Because we don't have any, we don't have an event handler to handle the change in the value. And then the change event, which the on change, I think we could leave that off as well. What else is in there?
There's a placeholder called full name.
Yeah, go ahead and put a placeholder in there. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of line 12, you can do the space / and then close the tag. And that should be good right there. So let's go ahead and save this and run it. And let's see what this looks like. And then we'll see what styles we need. So you're going to toggle between your browser and Visual Studio. Okay, very cool. That looks promising.
Yeah.
What does that px4 class do on the label?
Oh, it's on the container.
On the container. Let's look at what that px4 does. Okay, so it just kind of brings it in a little bit. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and we'll do the same thing for last name. So this is the whole, as you're typing, I'm going to go ahead and talk just to keep the kids entertained here. So this is the way Bootstrap allows you to include these divs and be able to format them the way you want to format them. And what we want to do is we want to put the label for the last name and the input for the last name in a new row. We want to guarantee that it's always going to come up in a new row. And the way that you guarantee it is that you put everything into a container, and then you specify the rows, and then you can control the columns that will be taken up. In this case, we're going to go ahead and take up all 12 columns for the label and the input. So what's interesting about the HTML4, it's a tag that allows you to click on the actual tag itself, and it places your cursor into the text box itself. So it's kind of like a helper so that you don't have to be exact as you're selecting an item.
Oh.
The HTML4 allows you to click on the label, and it says, oh, you're clicking on the label, but because the label points to an input, it actually places your cursor into that input for whatever label it is. So for example, if you click on the first name label, it's going to put your cursor in the first name text box. Cool. Let's save it, and then let's go back to our form and see what we got. Let's go back to the code and see what went wrong here. Oh, you forgot a quote after last name on line 21.
Oh, man.
All right, let's save this and go back, see what we get.
There we go.
All right. So we got our first name, we have our last name. what other fields do we need? We need we need the phone number, right?
Yeah.
All right. It's amazing how much Visual Studio Code helps you when you're working with this than using Visual Studio, huh?
Yeah.
If you want, go ahead and save this for now.
Okay.
And go ahead and close Edit Contacts, the tab itself. Go ahead and close Edit Contacts. No, make sure that it's in a good state. So get rid of that less than sign on line 25. Go ahead and get rid of line 25. And then save it. And then go ahead and close the tab edit. Yep. And let's go ahead and open up a new instance of Visual Studio Code. So right click on Visual Studio Code.
There we go.
There we go. Now we're in here. So now go and open up source. I feel like Visual Studio Code is just so much better at this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and expand edit contact.
All right, there we go.
And yeah, modify that puppy. Yeah, I feel like we're at home now. Now you can go ahead and continue on with, so here we're going to enter the phone number, right? I think it's just so cool that like you close your tag and it automatically closes it for you. It puts a closing tag for you. Or Visual Studio, you could tell Visual Studio is more for C# and for server-side programming. And Visual Studio Code is more for client side. And it's clear.
Mm-hmm. So for the input, we're doing a number? Yeah,
the problem is that you can't do a number.
Oh.
And the reason is because a phone is actually, you're going to have to do text because of the phone itself. So the difference between the / closing tag and the actual closing tag, like you see on the label on line 26 at the very end, is that input is a self-closing tag. In other words, you don't need the closing tag the way you do in label. An input just self-closes itself. It doesn't need an actual physical closing tag. And so yeah, that would be the difference between there. And then we need one for the email, right?
One more.
Oh, wait a second. We need a second input for this. And I'm thinking we could do it within the same column. We want to do the what is it? A label? Is that what it's called? Can we look at the database structure really quick? So we need a phone label. Okay. So we're going to need another input for that. So you see how you have the label on line 26? You need to do the same thing, the label for the input. And I'll tell you why. Let's go ahead and save this for a moment. Save it the way it is. And let's go look at the browser so that we can see what it's doing. So you see how you have label and it like phone number and then label is the next line. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code for a moment. Here's what we're going to need. We're going to need on line 25, we're going to need column medium 6, and then the label, the input label on line 32, we're going to put that inside of another column called column medium 6, so that way they show up side by side. All right, let's go ahead and save this and let's go look at the browser. Okay, so this is why you need that label, right?
Yeah.
So let's go put that label in there.
There it is.
Can we go back to the code for a moment? Can we change that label to say phone label?
Okay.
On line 33, instead of just label, let's say phone label. And it'll be 2 words properly capitalized. All right, let's go ahead and save it and then see what that looks like. I just feel that the aesthetics, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it
works.
Yeah. And let's do the placeholder as well as phone label. Probably something I would need to play with. The aesthetics is just kind of a little bit different than what the Google Contacts has. All right. Looking pretty good there.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the code for a second, just so that we get a complete understanding. So the first name and the last name appear in their own roles, in their own row, and in their own column. So they take up the whole column, right? And Bootstrap is based on a 12-column system. Now, if we go down to the phone number, you'll notice that we changed it to 6 columns, which meant that we wanted each one to take 50% of that row. So we put 2 columns within 1 row, each column taking up a total of 6 columns each. And that's why we're able to put the phone number and the phone label on the same row side by side. The interesting thing about this, can we go back to the browser? And this is, let's go ahead and open up the tools for Chrome. The nice thing about this is that if we were to go ahead and shrink the, continue to shrink the page little by little, you'll notice that eventually they go stacked on top of each other. And so this is one of the things that Bootstrap does for you automatically, where instead of making the input so small that, you know, it's almost impossible to see it, it's like, well, we're just going to stack it on top of each other, you know, and it changes the layout automatically for you so that you don't have to sit there and determine, it's like, do we keep these side by side? Do we go ahead and move them? It takes care of all that for you. So that's kind of cool. That's one of the cool things about Bootstrap that it does for you. It's a full-fledged framework which does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Granted, it hides a lot of the CSS complexity, and you don't need to learn a whole lot of CSS. I mean, it's, to some degree, it's important to understand what it's doing. Makes it easier to debug, but as long as you kind of get the concepts, you know. So we're going to want to do the same thing for email. So just like we did phone, let's go do it for email as well.
Okay.
So much better productivity when you're working in Visual Studio Code, working with HTML and JavaScript and JSX. It's crazy how well they've done this. I wish they would do that for Visual Studio. That way you can use one tool to do both. But unfortunately, Visual Studio 2019 is meant more for server-side code. They've done a great job of that one. Not so much with the HTML and JavaScript. But hats off to the Visual Studio Code team for really making us productive. So let's go ahead and save this and go back to the browser. And so for example, go ahead and click on the label first name. You see what I put you in there? Okay, now let's go remove the HTML4, or let's change that HTML4. For the first name, see where it says HTML4 first name? Change it to last name, and you'll see what I mean.
That's cool.
Go ahead and go back to the browser and click on that last name, or click on the first name, or click on phone number and click on first name. How it looks for that ID, and it says, oh, this is where you want to be. Because in devices, they're compensating for that error, for that fingerprint error. Like when you click on something, you may not directly click on the input, but if you click around the input and near the label, it says, you want to be in this input. So they automatically put you in there. So that's what that HTML for. So that HTML4 value, what's inside the quote, needs to match the ID that you're looking for, or that the browser should go look for, essentially. So there's a couple of challenges that we got here, and I want to cover those, I think, in future segments. I think for now, I want to at least collect this data. Now, we have a state. We have a state, and I'm just wondering if we should break it up into the several fields or let the server handle it. I think we're going to let the server handle it. So we have 10 fields that we need to populate. However, we only have first name, last name, phone number, and email. So we only have 4 fields that were populated on the form, which means that, and the label. So it's actually 6, which means that we need to break up that phone number. But I think we could break up that phone number at the server. We don't need to do it here at the client. We'll do some validation here at the client, but we don't have to break it up until we get to the server. So I think we're going to be okay with that. We'll add some default values and we'll be fine. So if you go to the example that you have been working off of, at the very top, there should be a use state. In your edit birthdays, go to the top and you'll see use state. We need to create a state. So starting at line 9, you see where it has a constant person, and then there's a method called set person, and we're saying equals use state. And we're passing in the initial state of our form. So we're going to need to do something similar. So let's go ahead and copy 9 through 15. And we'll go ahead and paste it to the very top of our edit contact. So after line 3, go ahead and paste it in there. Now, obviously, this state doesn't work, right? Give me an empty line between 10 and 11. This state doesn't work because we need first name, we need last name, we need phone. We also need the phone label, the email, and the email label. So we're going to need, we'll go ahead and leave ID as -1. Full name, let's create 2 fields, call it first name, and then we'll do another one for last name. And then we're also going to need the, what is it? Phone number or phone or what is it? What do we decide to call it?
Phone.
Okay. So we need phone and phone label, and then we need email and email label. Okay. Very cool. Now you'll notice that on line 4, the constants are called person and set person, right? So person representing the state, but person doesn't really represent what we're using here, right? So we need to fix that name to be something more appropriate, like contact info. And then, so instead of set person, it would just be set contact info. Okay, cool. So let's go back to that example and let's go see what is set person. What do we have as that set person? So if you scroll down a little bit. Oh, look at this, handle change. So in the handle change is where we're calling set person, right? So we need to do something similar to where we handle the change and we want to set the contact info, essentially is what we want to do. So we can go ahead and copy 19 through 24, and then we'll walk through the code. So handle change is going to be something that we left out. There was in the inputs, there's an on change event. So every time you click a keyboard or a key on your keyboard, the onChange event fires. And what we need to do is we need to assign handle change to that click event or that onChange event. And that onChange event receives a parameter. In other words, when you click on that keyboard and it fires off onChange, onChange is going to call handle change and it's going to say, hey, by the way, here's the event that's happening. And it sends it, we receive it through that parameter E, which is an event. And the event has a couple of values that are important to us. One of them is a target. It's like, what is a target? So it'll give us the actual input that is being changed. So on that input, we're going to grab the ID and we're going to grab the value. We have taken advantage of a naming convention. And what we did is we named the fields in our state, we named them the same that we named our input controller. So the ID in the input control matches the ID or the field in the state. So we can take advantage of the target ID, and then we just grab the value and we say, go ahead and let the key equal e.target.id. So that'll match the name of the input will match the ID of the input, will match one of the fields in the contact info state. E.target.value is the actual value that is being sent when you're typing, right? Mm-hmm. And then we log it just for informational purposes, right? There's really no need to log it, but we do. And then we call setPerson. SetPerson is the function that is being returned by useState. So useState says, okay, I got the initial state, the initial values of your state. And when you get ready to update, here is the method. Here's the function that you need to call. And we say, okay, we'll go ahead and represent that by set state or set contact info. So we need to change that set person to set contact info. And the ... person needs to change to lowercase contact info. And so that ... that 3 dots essentially is saying, make me a copy of the contact info. And in addition to that, go and update these 2 fields that are in there. So that's essentially a shortcut that is being used in JavaScript, in the latest version of JavaScript, that allows you to, one is you got contact info here and you're saying, make me a copy. So it makes a copy and it says, and then go and update these specific fields. So you're saying, here's the key, here's the value. So depending on what you got, whether it's first name, last name, phone number, the label or the email, so on and so forth, it's going to go and update those specific fields in your contact info state. All right. So let's go ahead and save this and let's go back to the browser and see what, see if we got it working correctly.
Uh-oh. Oh, the use state is not defined.
So what do we have to do? I'm going to let you debug this one, Jonathan. This is all you. Go, go, go.
Use state. So this has to be.
You can cheat. You can look at your example.
State.
So if you highlight it, what does it do? What else is being highlighted?
Oh, we have to import it. Duh.
Nice. But look how it's being imported.
Oh, through React. Okay. There we go.
All right. So let's go ahead and click on console over on your right-hand side in the debugger tools. And let's start typing some information. Just type in some gibberish in the first name input. It's not, oh, you know what? You know why it's not coming up in the console?
We don't have a console log.
No, we do. We never bound the onChange event from the input controllers.
Oh, so this has to be.
So let's go look at your example and look at what each input, how you implement that onChange.
On change, handle change.
Yep.
Okay. We have to do it on each one.
On each one. Yep.
On change. Did I spell it wrong?
You could look at your example.
Yeah.
That was very nice of React to suggest. I was like, wait, do you mean on change with the capital C?
C.
They're so kind over at Facebook, aren't they? Those developers, they just want to be helpful.
All right, let's try it again. Whoa. Cool. There it is.
Very cool. So we have all this, right? I think we're in a pretty good position where, well, you know what? We need to add the button. So let's go back to your example.
Oh yeah.
What do we have? Do we have like a submit button or something?
Oh, here it is. We have a validation.
Yeah, we'll do the validation after.
Okay.
For now,
Just this div.
yeah, but I think what we need to do is we need to put the button into its own row.
Okay.
And we can just go ahead and create a column that maybe takes up like 1 or 2 columns instead of 12. And then we're also going to need a handle click. So let's go look at your example and look at what handle click is doing. So handle click is actually doing an Axios call, right? But I think what we want to do right now is we don't want to do the Axios call because we haven't set up the controller yet. We just want to do a console log.
Okay.
So we do need the constant handle click equals E inside the parenthesis with the fat arrow function, and then the start of the curly brace. Go ahead and take that with you. So let's go see what that does.
Should I just put submit?
Yep.
Oh.
Hey, look at that. So it grabs your object, dumps it out to the console. You can actually expand that object. And that's the state of your object.
Cool.
Okay. Handling all the changes and everything. And so I think this is a good place to stop because now we have to, in the next episode, what I want to do is I want to handle some validation. And we may be doing a bunch of changes to this form in order to be able to handle all that validation. But in the meantime, Jonathan, I think what we should do is we should go ahead and push this up to source control.
Yeah.
You remember how to do that through Visual Studio?
It's down here somewhere.
Let's go to Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. And go ahead and stop it. We're going to need to stop this. And yeah, git changes. There you go. And so go ahead and put a comment in there. This is, what do we have? We have
our inputs or
contact info, form page, completed, no validation. This way, when people look at the comment, at least they know what state it's in. And commit and push.
There it is.
Very cool. Let's go over to GitHub and let's make sure that it's there.
There it is.
Cool. All right. So yeah, so this will give us a good foundation. Yeah, we got some challenges coming up with that phone number in order to separate it out. And so it's going to be quite the interesting adventure that we got coming up. But I think I think we're off to a good start with this contact info. I'm glad to see your ability to code and be able to follow other examples, which is essentially, if you don't memorize it, you're going to have to follow along with other examples, and that's really what a lot of coders do. It's very rare when you're going to be writing a full application from your memory. It's capable. A lot of people can definitely do it. But in most cases, you're going to be piecing together parts from other applications. So you take the capability that another application does and change it and mold it so that it fits what you need, which is essentially what we did with the significant birthdays, right? We're just changing it around to be able to fit what it is that we need. And so yeah, I think breaking this up into multiple segments and bits and pieces, people can watch this over a lunch break or maybe over a dinner, or who knows. And once we get the whole string of episodes completed, somebody says like, hey, I'm going to go try that, and I'm going to try to learn how to do this, using React and using C# and using SQL Server database. So yeah, we'll get to the point where I want to be able to, hopefully we can finish this by the end of season 1, so that starting season 2, we can actually jump into something even more complicated. And so
sounds fun.
Every single application that we write is going to be that much more complex. And the common thing is that we're going to see that we're going to start with a lot of the same foundational pieces. It's just that there's going to be more pieces added as we continue with it. So very cool.
Yeah.
Until next episode, where we'll cover some of the validation, and we'll try to break up that phone number, or maybe just some validation, and we'll send the whole phone number over to the server, making sure that we can break it up at the server before we send it into the database. Probably good enough.
Yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.
Until next time.
Peace out.
Peace out.